This week's Super Cyber Friday, we're just going to open with some good advice, bad advice, and worse advice on cyber risk management. I'll start with you, Olivia. Give me some good advice on managing cyber risk.
Good advice is determining where all your assets are and all of including your third parties to be included in your risk assessment.
All right, that is good advice. All right, take the flip side of that, Saka. Give me some bad advice on managing your cyber risk and maybe something you've actually seen happen.
Get your red, amber, greens right in risk management and find out whether you're a amberish red or reddish green or greenish amber.
So just lock all your risk based on colors. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's really bad advice, but yes, that's
Okay.
exactly what I'm saying.
And what's advice that's worse than that, Olivia?
Not assuming that some people may be colorblind. A lot of men, it's shown, cannot see the color red.
That's a good point. All right, well, let's begin.
Get ready. It's Super Cyber Friday.
Welcome, everybody. It's Super Cyber Friday. Today's topic is hacking cyber risk management and an hour of rethinking how we normally manage cyber risk and how we can do it better. All right, our guests today, you just met them. Olivia Rose, who's the former CISO over at Amplitude, and also Saket Modi, who is the CEO over at Safe Security. Guess what? Safe. They're our sponsor for today's very event. Thank you, Safe, for sponsoring this episode of Super Cyber Friday. All right, 7 different ways you can participate. You can participate in the chat room, like many of you have already discovered. You can submit how not to manage cyber risk, a bad idea. And by the way, the winner of the best bad idea, which we determine the following week, gets to win an awesome CISO Series fleece. By the way, we're looking at new stuff to give away, so hang tight on that. You can also submit tips on managing your cyber risk. That's 10% better. By the way, label your bad ideas, bad idea or 10%, vice versa. You can vote in our polls. You can join us on video with Bring Me On. We'll try to bring on as many of you as possible. Ask a question. If you look at the very bottom of the screen, there's a thing that says ask a question. Go ahead and click on that and ask a question. We'll try to get to as many of those as possible. And you can also vote on your favorite question. All right. Today's schedule, you saw it. Good advice, bad advice, worse advice. Your bad ideas and your 10% better tips. We will play the public interest, a popular one, which you can play along as well. Our poll will go live on how not to manage cyber risk. Again, your bad tip on how not to manage cyber risk. Then we'll play a game we haven't played in a while. That totally sucks. And then we'll put our poll live for vote for your favorite tip on managing cyber risk. That's the other poll. And then we'll play our Department of Yes. We'll have our last question and final advice. And guess what? At the very end of the show, with just 5 minutes to go, we will have a special guest surprise. You're going to want to stick around for that. It's going to be pretty awesome. And then we'll do our meetup. And that will be at the end of the hour. All right. Our next show is Hacking Like a Cyber Crook. That's going to be on September 16th, so a week from today. And if you look at the very bottom of the screen, there's this sort of teal-colored rectangle, which is actually a button. If you were to click on that button, another window would open. It would not take you out of this discussion at all. And you could register for next week's Super Cyber Friday. Now, why do you want to do that? Well, if you register early, you are automatically entered in a raffle to win a CISO Series jacket. And guess what? Congrats to this week's winner is David Peach of Illuminate Risk. He has won a jacket for just doing that. So it is doable. Click on that link at any time during this event. All right, let's jump into our conversation. We have an active crowd. Please stay active. I'm going to just start with you, Saket. I will say that this topic of cyber risk management comes up again and again. It is hands down our most popular topic. We've done this on our video chat / Super Cyber Fridays over the years. It is always the most popular. I think it's popular because everyone's still trying to figure it out and everyone struggles with it. What do you think, Saket?
I'd like to assume so too, David, and I'm biased when I think so. But when you say that, I actually think it really is.
So you think people are just struggling and trying to figure this out? I mean, it's what you're bailiwick. What do you think is majorly broken? And I think you kind of said it in your bad tip, is that they lean on, these scores and color codings to determine what their risk is. Is that where it's broken, or where do you think the core is?
I think, David, if you think about the data, which clearly backs the fact that cybersecurity risk management is fundamentally broken, because you're looking at an industry which is $150 billion, growing at 16% year over year. And despite that number, if you ask World Economic Forum's top risk surveys, cybersecurity has been consistently been featured as the top risk on boardrooms and CEOs' minds continuously for the last 5 years. And being the top three is pretty significant. If you look at cyber insurance, right, the premiums last year on an average went up by 52%, while the loss ratios for insurance companies went up from 42 to 72%. Again, I didn't mean to throw numbers, but this is hard data, which actually points to the fact that despite so much money going into cybersecurity, we still don't know how do you manage that, how do you measure that, and really get a handle of the same. And therefore, again, I think there's enough substance to say that despite everything we're doing, we still need a better grip on cybersecurity risk management.
All right, Olivia, I throw the same question to you. Again, this discussion could just be on this topic alone, but I don't want it to make it that. What do you think is the core thing that's most broken with cyber risk management?
I think Russ hit the nail on the head in the comments, to be honest. I think we have too many people saying that they're experts in it, and they say they write books about it, and it's so customized by each organization. And yes, Russ, I freely admit I've been in security for over 21 years, and I pretty much am a beginner with risk management, because cyber risk, because every day something new pops up. So there is no one way to do it.
Yeah, it's a moving target as well, on top of everything, which everything in cybersecurity is, for that matter. I even asked once, I go, is there anything in cybersecurity that's set it and forget it? And nobody could think of one thing in cybersecurity that's set it and forget it. It just doesn't exist as well. All right, please get your questions in. We want to hear from you. And I see already 10% better and bad ideas are coming in, so keep them flowing. And by the way, I'm impressed that I'm seeing a lot of 10% better tips already, because the crap that I give our audience is they always have 10 times as many bad ideas as they have good ideas, which I don't know what that's saying about our audience. Okay. So there is the risk of the unknown, but honestly, there is the risk of the very well-known, and that is regulations. Regulations are extremely well-known, but at the same time, even though they're well-known, they change. So I'll start with you again, Saket, on this one. How is it that risk is changing with these very known risks of regulations?
Sure. So, David, the two categories of risk, the known risks, and then there are the known unknowns. And you can further go to the unknown unknowns, but assuming
can I divine the known knowns as regulations, as known unknowns as we are going to get attacked somewhere kind of a thing? That's a known unknown. 0 days,
right? That's a good known unknown that, it's out there somewhere. We don't know whether we'll be hacked by that or not. So you mentioned about the regulators. I want to take just a 90-second step back before I go to the known knowns and the known unknowns, because this was a very interesting point that I was talking to, and this is actually the CIO of Procter and Gamble, and he mentioned this very beautifully, where he says that, Saket, if you really think about it, right, go back to Industrial Revolution 1, 2, and 3. Everything which was being manufactured, whether it's a shampoo bottle or it's the aircraft, it's all evolved to the point where no matter how many variables, the known knowns and the known unknowns, like just think about an aircraft flying in the air, right? It has over 100,000 parts which need to be together. And there is known unknowns in terms of the weather, in terms of the wind, in terms of pressure. There's so much which is out there. But despite all of that stuff, that industry, which is Industrial Revolution 1.0 and 2.0, have got to a point where the risk is acceptable for it to be commercial. And that's the reason when you step into a Boeing 737 or an Airbus 320, or you pick up a Head and Shoulders bottle, you don't think that the bottle will have bacteria. Or when you step into an aircraft, you don't think you'll not make it on the other side. Cybersecurity, or cyber in general as a space, which is Industrial Revolution 3 and 4, is still to come at that maturity where I actually think that, us as security leaders or technology leaders, we there's definitely a lot of known knowns and known unknowns. But you know what? There are ways to quantify the known unknowns and the known knowns, put them together to say what is the degree of acceptable risk, and based on that, you do the right kind of, take business decisions. And therefore, I think the cybersecurity world will evolve to that point where it can actually more predictably say that, look, this is the risk that we're sitting on, and it already takes into account what is known and at the same time what is unknown. The last piece on the regulation which you mentioned, I think regulators step in only when things are broken, because they have a lot on their plate to worry about, and only once an industry screws up in a particular way, or a particular segment of companies screw up in a particular way, the regulators have to step in, especially when the consumer at the end is being penalized without their knowledge. So I think regulations like the new SEC guideline, which is on cybersecurity risk management, which is right now out for comments, is very clearly talking about like some incredible best practices which should have been followed, but has not been followed for decades in cybersecurity risk management. And therefore the SEC thinks that they have to step in and really, almost herd the cats and say, look, this is the right way of doing things. So David, that's how I think. And I think it's a very positive move. It's a much needed, thing. We've seen some of that through the GDPRs of the world in Europe, but there really needs to be this, which is very, very localized based on industries and segments of companies. That's what I think, David.
All right, I'm going to throw this over to you, Olivia. There was a lot said there by Saket. There's a lot, so digest whatever you want. But I think one of the things that I'm taking away is that risk can be calculated by looking at the known knowns and the known unknowns. What do you think?
I'm going to be devil's advocate here. And it's only because of my personal feelings and how I go about life in general. So Saket, you are probably right, and I'm completely wrong, to be completely honest.
That is not a way to set up about something you're about to say, Olivia. Go ahead.
Go for it.
When you say that, it's like, everyone ignore the next words out of my mouth.
No, now they're going to pay attention because they want to see if they agree that I'm wrong. I think that everything that the government typically gets involved with, they mess up. So I think that's my personal opinion. And the more regulations we have, the worse it gets. And so there are so many examples we can give. I don't want this to become a political chat, but there's so many things you can bring up. But whenever the government got involved, it completely ruined something or it broke something. So I think we need to do it. I think where we've gone wrong with cybersecurity and risk management is that we have let our egos take control. There's been this boom of solutions that promise the silver bullet, but don't deliver on it. And it's become a money grab. And I know some flippin' sharp people that if we paid them, for a year, 10 of them to sit in a room somewhere and figure out how to fix and protect the United States and whatever country, and the good people from the bad people, we will be a lot more successful than having the government come in and treat us like a bunch of babies.
And you said you didn't want to make this political? Is that what you said? All right, before we jump into the next question, I'm going to jump us into our first game just a minute early, just because of the timing. I think it'll work out well now. So we're going to play our first game, which is called the Public Interest. So let's jump into this. And as the audience knows, they can play along here too, because the answers are, now you notice they're not A, B, because the audience is a few seconds behind us. So what will happen is we used to have all the answers, answer A, B, but then the thing was we didn't know if they were answering question 1, 2, or 3, or 4. So that's why it says A through like I or whatever here right now. But you know how the game is played. Our audience knows as well. It's pretty simple. Two issues here. Most average month search queries. What do you think it is? Audience, chime in. What do you think, A or B? And you can answer the same here. Security fail or security incident. Which do you think gets more search queries?
Security incident.
What do you think, Saket?
Security incident.
John Procap, Q is not a response. What are these? Oh, there we go.
All right. Most people are answering B. A few A's in there, and the correct answer is B. Almost a 2-1. They're very good. All right. 1-1 for both of you. Good answer. All right. Next one. Company secrets or customer data? Which one do people search more? Company secrets or customer data?
Customer data.
Customer data.
All right. Going the same way again. And you were both correct. Almost a 5-1 or a little over 5-1. Very good. 2-2. Both of you are doing very, very well. All right. And I think most of our audience is doing well as well on this one. All right. What gets more search queries, cyber insurance or security breach?
Security breach.
What do you think, Saket?
Yeah, is this last 3 months? Is it last 12 months? Is it?
It'll be what's most current. So I would probably go with most recent here.
Yeah, if it's more recent, I'd go with cyber insurance.
You're going cyber insurance.
Yeah,
Olivia's going security breach, and you should have stayed with your first answer. It is security breach. All right, so we got 3 for Olivia, 2 for Saket. Last one here. Okay, this one's got 3.
Oh.
Accept risk, avoid risk, or manage risk. Which one?
Well, it's not accept risk.
I'd like it to be manage risk, so I'll stick to that. Manage risk.
What do you think?
I'm thinking it's I, but I'll go with H just to be contrarian.
You should have gone for I. You would have been the 4 for 4. All right, the two of you have tied 3-3. This will play into the next game that we play. Did anyone get 4 for 4 here? Interested to know who got 4 for 4 on this here. Let me close this out. Good job for you. So 3-3 for both of you. This will play into our next game. That totally sucks, which will be in just a moment. We will play that game. All right, let's get to our questions. Oh, the good one came in from Dustin Sachs. I want to ask this one. I'll start with you, Olivia, on this. What are the most effective methods you have found to combat FUD, being fear, uncertainty, and doubt, in risk management? I am sure there's plenty of FUD in risk management, and I'm sure emotions cause risk to sway in different directions. So how do you take the emotions out of it? How do you get the FUD out of it? What's your take?
I think the easy way to go about it is to storytell, of course, to different audiences. That being said, that's the easy response. What I tend to do with my own team to curb that FUD is to say this security is not a matter of life and death, unless, of course, you're in healthcare. And then if security controls fail, of course, there's human life involved. But if you're in retail, let's just all calm down if there's an incident or a breach, because nobody's going to die here. Okay. There may be bad repercussions, but let's not look so bad that we think there's going to be, uncertainty and death. We can control what's happening within our environment.
But won't you have in any situation, and I want your answer, both your answers to this, anytime you create some like risk management profile, and also, and we don't need to say this over and over again, but it's not you who have to accept the risk, it's the business accepting the risk, but you're helping them sort of build that out. Won't you inevitably, no matter what you create, there's going to be one person that says, but what about this? What about that? You're smiling like you've heard this a bazillion times. Yes, you're always going to miss, or you're not going to hit something that's very concerning to one or two or many people. Yes, Olivia, you're smiling pretty hard. How does it manifest itself, and how do you deal with it?
It's random. It's buzz noise. And long story short, I'm going to keep this short so Saket can speak to it. But you have to be, as the security leader, you need to be the one controlling the conversation. You're the one leading everybody to water. So if one little lamb goes off to the right, it's your job to bring that little lamb back into the herd to all go down to the water together. So if people are sprouting off these random things, you need to step up and
is there a
change how
technique
you're
you've
approaching.
used? Can you give us an example of a technique you've used to bring that lamb back in?
Really, just it depends. I mean, I read the person. So people say and throw in things for different reasons. They're trying to get attention. They're trying to get promoted. They're trying to prove me wrong. They don't like me. I mean, there's millions of reasons. So I always look at the reason why somebody's saying something and address it that way to bring them back in. Some people like to be called out. Some people don't. So for someone who's trying to get attention, I'll make a joke about it and bring them back in that way. So I do it on a
But that's a good point
personality
that people
basis.
have different reasons for
Yeah.
bringing up something else. Saket, have you dealt with this in terms of the what about this, the what about that issue? How do you deal with
So,
that?
absolutely, David. And by the way, maybe I've seen some different sides of things, and that therefore the 2 points which you mentioned. Firstly, I actually don't think there's any way by which you can get all of your cattle all the way nailed down to the point where you really know what's going on. And this reminds me of that story about this person who used to go and extinguish fires in a forest, and somebody asked him, how do you extinguish all the fires? And they, you know what, I don't need to extinguish all the fires. I just need to extinguish the ones that really matter, because it's just impossible given my resources that I can do that. And the reason I brought that up is because there are certain ways, I think traditionally there used to be compliance where like, hey, by the way, don't worry, we're compliance, and went to CMMC, we're level 2, 3, 4, we're NIST 3 and 4, but that story didn't stand for long, because 99.6% of the financial services companies hacked in the last 24 months were all compliant, right? So compliance definitely doesn't qualify. And therefore, what we like using, David, based on conversations with a lot of CISOs, is a better way of looking at it. And in our view, arguably what wins that game is really something like the attack MITRE framework. It's such a beautiful, quite literally a beautiful way of seeing your way in which a hacker would hack you, starting from reconnaissance, initial access, lateral movement, all the way till data exfiltration and impact. And the way you talk about it is, hey, by the way, everything that goes wrong in my environment needs to map to a technique which is failing. And this is how I have thought through each one of them. Is it possible for a CISO to do it? I mean, that's arguable depending on the resources. But on the other side, those become some really good frameworks by which you can actually see the hacker perspective and not just a compliance or a checklist perspective or a vendor's perspective of, because it's funny, right? Depending on who you talk to as a vendor, that becomes the number one problem in cybersecurity. So you talk to EDR, that's number one. If you talk to firewall, that's number one. You talk to cloud, that's number one. Question is, how many number ones are there? And that's why you need to see it yourself of what's really failing, and then map that to the external threat landscape and the business context, and based on that, take some decisions and show the visibility. And so that's how I look at it, David.
So let's weave this into. I'm going to set you up with another question. I just want to remind everybody to click the link at the bottom to register for next week's Super Cyber Friday. Please do that now. We got another game coming up in a few minutes. And guess what? The poll has gone live for how not to manage cyber risk. So please go vote in our poll. All right. What you've been all talking about, and I think this really needs to be the core of our conversation, is objectively managing risk. So let's talk very kind of concretely of how do we go to an objective risk management discussion. And let's ping pong it back and forth, if you don't mind, Olivia. Just give me like kind of one tip on how do you begin this sort of process of objective managing risk objectively, and we'll just kind of go back and forth between you and Saket.
Well, from the very beginning, like I said at the very beginning, figure out your landscape, what's in it, what all the avenues are, third parties, connected parties, people. Get a very solid understanding about what's there before you even start to assess the risk.
Okay. All right. Saket, go to you.
Yeah, so where do you start from objectively looking at your cyber risk? I couldn't agree more with Olivia, because it always starts about what you have. But again, that's step zero, right? Because if you don't know what you have, there's no starting point. Generally, it's very difficult. I'm still to come across one CIO or one CISO of a Fortune 2000 company which can say, I know exactly the inventory that we have, right? It just doesn't exist, right? But one of my close advisor, he says, you always have more data than you need. You always need less data than what you think you need. So what that simply means is that, start with what you have and then you build on top of it. So absolutely, David, I would concur with what Olivia was speaking.
All right. Then anything to add? Because I want to throw back to Olivia. What would you add to this?
So once you know where you stand, now where you stand is not just in terms of the assets, because you go one step deeper where what are the gaps in each one of those assets. And by the way, assets is not just technology. You look at people, process, and technology and third parties. So it almost becomes like your internal stack, which is people, process, technology. External is all third parties. You got to take all of that in if you want to come to an objective view of your cyber risk. And each one of them has vulnerability. So the way I like looking at it is there are two dimensions to it: signals, which are gaps, and attack surface. The attack surface is people, process, technology, third party, your IoT devices, your SCADA systems, all of that stuff, right? That's the attack surface. And the signals are vulnerabilities, configurations, malwares, your issues around leaked credentials, phishing information, etc. Those are all signals. So once you get all of that in, again, the beauty is you can map all of that to the attack MITRE framework and then understand various ways in which a hacker can actually, starting from initial access, go all the way to data exfiltration and impact. And that's the way you start visualizing. And then obviously once you visualize it, there are ways to go ahead and quantify it even further. David.
I'm going to get back to the quantifying. Let me add, and I like, so that's a far more logical way of doing it. Do you handle it differently? What ways do you handle it, Olivia?
Well, I was going to say that's an interesting approach because you're looking at all the avenues. My question, though, for Saket is, do you look at where your crown jewels are first to be able to assess the impact?
Saket?
That's a great question, Olivia. And absolutely, you always want to start with the crown jewels because I'll give you a 60-second story of how we look at going to all your asset, because this question comes up all the time. How can I see, I have a lot of assets which I don't know about. How can you give me a risk posture if you yourself do not know about it? I don't know about it. And giving this example. If you have 500 rooms and you're the general manager of a hotel, and I asked you how clean are the rooms, I can ask you as a questionnaire and you fill it in and give me okay, everything's clean. The other way is I go to one room and whatever I learned from one room, I say, this is how, clean 500 rooms are. Or I get to 400 rooms and based on that, I say, okay, this is how I think all 500 rooms would be. So you don't need to go to 500. You can actually go to 400 and say, look, this is how it looks like how the hotel manages the hygiene and the cleanliness of the rooms. And by the way, in the report, you can always say, but I have not assessed, looks like 10-20% of the rooms. So that can be something which will be completely drastically different, but call it out. But even that degree of visibility currently doesn't exist. So short answer, we always start with the crown jewels because measure what matters first, and then you expand from there. And you don't need to cover 100% of your tech stack, but just call out whatever is there that you are covering.
So I just want to mention this good argument here about the crown jewels. Now, I agree with you because your crown jewels is what matters most. But Jesse argues crown jewels is a bad idea because that assumes hackers and an organization are both thinking the same thing where the crown jewels are concerned. But I don't know if I agree with that kind of logic that's going there, because even if the attackers don't know where the crown jewels are, that's actually a good thing, I would say. Or if they think that something that is not valuable to you is a crown jewel, that may not be of a great concern. But as we all know, what may not be a crown jewel for you today may be some, just information that a hacker needs to ultimately get to the crown jewels. So I don't know how much I agree with this logic. What do you think, Olivia, here with Jesse's logic?
I think it's an imperfect science, if you can call it a science. I think you got to start somewhere with the most commonly known and what you would assume would be the crown jewels, granted, assuming that it could change tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And then there's another comment is, you're absolutely right. The easiest thing to break that makes them inoperable, perhaps leading to ransomware or something, but you've got to start somewhere. And commonly known crown jewels are the first approach to take.
All right, we have a game to play.
Oh no, Totally Socks.
All right, so this is That Totally Sucks. So what you see before you is a board of 12 hidden things that could happen in your environment. 11 of them stink at various degrees of stink. One is actually good. One you actually want to get.
Ooh.
Both Olivia and by the way, Aaron, I forget who's blue and who's red on this thing, but I'm just going to call it, and you may have to switch on in this. By the way, since you both got 3 correct and 1 wrong, you will each have to select 4 of these numbers. And what's going to happen is the 4 things that you select describe your environment. The audience is now then going to vote who has selected the worst environment of the 4. Roses are red. Roses are red. Did you say, is Olivia red? We're going to find out in a second. All right, so Olivia, I will start with you. Olivia, you are red. You'll see what I mean by in that in a second. Pick any number 1 through 12, and you'll see what has happened in your environment.
My lucky number 8.
Number 8. Let's see what you
Perhaps
get.
unlucky today.
Audits are now weekly. Not
Yay!
awful, but that's not fun. So now you are red. You see, I just sort of indicated there in the right corner. You are red. So now, Socket, you pick one.
I'll go with 5.
All right, we're going over to number 5. Every week, employees upload PII to a different unapproved SaaS app. Ooh, not good. Ouch. All right, Olivia, I think, is a little bit ahead right now because that you don't want. All right, Olivia, pick another number.
I'm going to go with my second lucky number, which is 3.
3. What do we got for 3? The board demands employee monitoring software. Ooh, also not good. Your staff is not going to like you after that one.
Nope.
All right, Socket, pick one.
I'll go with 7.
7. What do we got for 7? You hire the CEO's son, who turns out to be a toxic employee.
That's worse.
That's a lot of no fun. That really stinks. All right, Olivia, pick another one.
I'll go with number 1.
Number 1. We go over here to number 1, and that is a pile of old hard drives left in a closet just goes missing. That could be bad. It could be good. It could be nothing. Who knows? Who knows? It could be just a bunch of video games on those hard drives. Nobody knows. All right, you pick, Socket.
I'll go with 11.
We're going with the number 11. Given the CEO's predilection to click on phishing emails, you quarantine all his emails. That's not going to help the business at all. All right. Last one for you, Olivia.
All right, I'll go with 12.
We're going with 12. And number 12 is DDoS attack at 4 p.m. on a Friday before a long weekend.
Oh,
a lot
that's
of no fun.
awesome.
That does not stick. All right, last one for you, Socket.
I'll go with 9.
Number 9. All right, nobody's gotten the good one yet. I don't know. You're related to your entire security team. All right. All right. Here's how this works, everybody. Put up the poll, Aaron. You're going to vote for either Olivia or Socket here. Who has the worst environment? Let me repeat. Olivia's environment is a pile of old hard drives got left in the closet, goes missing. The board demands employee monitoring software. Audits are now weekly, and a DDoS attack at 4 p.m. on a Friday before a long weekend. All right, different varying degrees of stink. I don't know which ones you can manage. Then Socket has every week employees upload PII to a different unapproved SaaS app. That doesn't mean anything's been broken into. It just means your PII is in a lot of places you don't want it to be. You hire the CEO's son, who turns out to be a toxic employee. That's not good. You have to quarantine all the CEO's emails because he keeps clicking on phishing emails, and you're related to your entire security team. Looks like you've got more employee issues than Olivia does. But then again, Olivia had to put the employee monitoring software on. Blue. So everyone seems like Socket, you're going to win in terms of having the crappier environment. Let's see.
Yep.
Let's go take a look at how the poll is turning out. It's good that you're yelling blue, 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 but you need to actually vote. I see more people saying blue than actually voting. You actually have to vote in the thing. So I'm going to just say right now, before even it goes bad. Oh yeah, Socket, you're winning, and again, I put that winning in quotes. You won/lost in terms of you had the worst environment there. All right. So congrats to you on winning That totally sucks. All right, let's get back to our game. Remember, everybody, if you have not clicked the link at the bottom screen to register for next week, please do that right now. And our poll is still open for the best bad idea. Do we have a new question that's come in? No, that's the old question. Get your questions in. I got more questions. Let's talk about real-time risk, okay? Because one of the issues we talk about with risk is trying to get everybody together, decide what is going on. But heck, I can't imagine that's updated more than once. I'm going to say a month if you're lucky. I mean, how and also how important is to know your real-time risk? Is it that important? Saka, what's your take on this?
So, David, if you think about a couple of things which are changing on a daily basis, the first thing is the more obvious one is the external threat landscape, right? We see vulnerabilities all the time. With, iOS getting hacked these days, right? You have browser issues, you have operating system issues, but that's just the external. The other thing which changes internally is a lot of configurations of systems, of databases, of cloud configuration, all of that keeps changing internally also. And not only that, some business context keeps changing. So if you think about these three things, variables, the external threat landscape, the internal gaps, and the business context, they keep changing quite dynamically. So any way to go ahead and audit, or I use the word audit because it's very popularly used, but go ahead and basically look at your risk, which is not taking this dynamic nature of these three different legs of what keeps changing in risk management, is almost stale, right? And a lot of times, not only can it be misleading, sometimes it can actually go ahead and give you an inaccurate picture and gives you a false sense of security. Because think about an audit which happened right before Log4j came out to the public. It probably would say a lot of greens, while in reality the hackers might have intruded in and doing the wrong things. So that's how I look at it, David, that given the dynamic nature of external and internal stuff, it's extremely important, if not real time, because real time is like, okay, you need 6 nines, but based on triggers of what changes, you definitely need something at a better frequency. You said monthly. I can bet that more than 90% of the large companies out there, they probably do it maximum, say, once in a quarter. Most of them.
That's what I was guessing monthly, but that was aspirational at that point. Was I being aspirational, Olivia, with monthly?
No, I like real time.
Okay. Talk to me about it.
Maybe I live up in the clouds, sliding down rainbows. But I think in my last role, and I think this would not be usable in much larger organizations. So I'm gonna say that before somebody says that. We configured a GRC posture management tool that I won't name, but I love it. And on there, and it connected via API to a lot of our systems and production and so forth. We got it all fixed up. It was a really neat tool. So I divide when something is off via that tool, showing something is off. I divide those offs into like SHITs, and like something's really, really bad here. Or we got to get on that in the next day or two. And then the third level is, you know what, let's go yell at, the engineering person who obviously did not merge their code before launching into production. That's more of a Slack message, go fix it, that type of thing. So to me, that's a way to do it real time. And again, that is not transferable for use in larger organizations.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have to run into our next game fairly soon, but I'm going to delay and let's see. We got a question that came in from Chase Palmer. How do you make risk a part of everyday decision making? So this kind of leans toward the real time. When company leaders who feel they can't be bothered to talk risk remediation except for twice a year when the board wants an update. I like this, because shouldn't risk determine how we behave today, Saket? Yes.
Absolutely, David. And in my mind, the fact that this even exists as a question and I'm not saying about the particular individual, it's as an industry, is actually the unfortunate reality where most of the decisions which we take in cybersecurity, whether it's procurement of a new cybersecurity product or patching X number of controls on a server or a database, they're not really risk driven. And if you ask most CISOs, can you give me the before and after state, right? Like, tell me, oh, you implemented a big threat hunting solution, you implemented a big, XDR in your environment. How much did you do as a risk reduction? And by the way, the same dollars that you spent on that product, if you spent that on something else, would that have given you a better return on security investment? That's called a ROSI, or return on the investment. Generally, those questions are not answered. I like saying this, that most security procurements happen because of the salesperson of that company chased and persisted the most, and not because the organization needed that tool the most. And that's where you need to have the right needle to know that any action you take, how much is the needle moving, and that needs to take into account external factors and internal factors of where you are. So David, that's what I think.
All right. We got a call that just came in.
Hello, welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
All right. This is the Department of Yes game, where we have some really bad ideas on how to manage risk. We've heard a lot of great advice on risk. Now we're going to hear some not so good advice on risk. But it is your job to accept these ideas and explain why it would be a good idea to include this in your environment. And I will start with you, Olivia, on this. This one comes from Matthew Thompson. And his advice is to fire your whole security team and outsource all of it to an MSSP, so you believe you transfer all the risk to the MSSP. Why do you want to do this?
So I have to detail why I think this is truly a good idea.
Yes. Well, you're like, all right,
Well,
bring it on. This is why we want to do it. This is what the benefit it's going to bring to our environment. By the way, Socket, stay there. You are going to need an answer for this too. Go ahead, Olivia.
You know what? I'm open to that. I mean, I'll miss my team. I like them. They're great people. I'll feel bad about it. But on the other hand, I think about meetings with executives, how much easier that will be able to point the finger at a third party. That might be kind of nice. And you know what? To be honest, they probably do this 24/7. It's their job, so they probably do it better. So,
all right,
let's
I kind
do
of like
it.
that. I like. By the way, the pointing the finger thing. Socket, why do you want to do this?
Now,
Now again, you have to say yes to this. No,
yeah.
you lose.
So I'm saying the only reason I would say yes to something like this is when I know the company is going to shut down, when I know I need a next job and I'm doing my job hunting for the next job. And that's why, that scenario, I would say that's a good.
So that's a selfish answer, hooray, and that's for the business, because you're not trying to help the business succeed. All right, next one. This one comes in from, by the way, this one, what happens to the back channel, Aaron, our producer, tells me who said what. Aaron wouldn't need to tell me who said this one, because this one's got the stench of Dutch Schwartz all over it. Things that I've said this before. All right, here we go. This is what you're going to do, Socket. And by the way, Olivia, you'll answer second. You're going to create a 50-slide deck for your board that starts with a vulnerability matrix, moves on to detailed results of audits, and closes with a pivot table of compensating controls, finished by saying, and that's why cybersecurity is much more important than driving revenue. Why do you want to do this?
Was this from Dutch? Who is this
It
from?
is Dutch, of course. It's always Dutch. When you get something like that, it's got Dutch. Dutch's fingerprints are all over it.
It's terrible.
Well, I would want to. I want to do that in a real world. Right after one of my competitor got breached.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody as a peer in my industry just got breached and lost $100 million because of a breach.
Oh, you could say anything at that point. Yes.
Exactly.
Heck. Yeah. It's all about timing on this one. Yes.
So yes, that's the yes for me.
All right. Olivia, I throw this to you. Why do you want to do Dutch's incredibly stupid idea?
I think it's a great idea. I
Okay.
think that companies should value security better, and this is a great way of showing that. If you have 50 slides of information about why security is more important than driving revenue, then you've got a pretty good valid use case and reason. Plus, customers love security. They love trust. It's a warm and fuzzy. Warm and fuzzy supports revenue.
They
Oh,
like
come on.
trust
I've
too.
used that line.
There you
It
go.
worked.
Good answer. Good answer. Good answer. Good job, Dutch. Good job, Matthew. We are not going to be playing the other game. Oh, by the way, did we get the 10% better poll? Yes, the 10% better poll is up, and a few of you have started voting already. Please vote on the 10% better poll as well. All right, we've got only 15 minutes, and we actually only got about 10 minutes with the two of you. Let me do this. All right. I want to actually, Saket, I want to get to, because I don't think we've mentioned exactly how Safe Security is handling this very issue of risk. So I want to give you a little bit of a form right now to explain how you're doing this, how you're addressing the sort of the risk what should I say, risk profiling, best way to explain it, or how you're managing risk for clients with Safe Security. I want to, so everyone understands what you guys do.
Certainly. Thanks, David. And it really ties in with everything we spoke about. We think fundamentally cybersecurity is broken because of three reasons. One, because it has a lot of dashboards which are very isolated. Secondly, it's very, very reactive. So most of the analytics happen really at the SOC, which only tells you about an incident after it has occurred. And most cybersecurity tools don't talk about the language of the business, in the language of the business. And that's the problem, because the CFO, the CEO with those 50 slides or even 5 cannot really understand what's going on. And what we try to do is really more in lines with exactly what Olivia was saying. We basically created this very, very easy, lightweight deployment tool, no agents, where we go into an organization and say, hey, you know what? You have enough security products. Give us APIs from your CrowdStrike, from your Qualys, from your AWS Security Hub, from your SaaS solutions like Salesforce and O365 and KnowBe4 and others. And we map all of those signals to the AttackMiter framework, and we see what kill chains are executable based on what's failing in your environment. We throw those techniques into something called a Bayesian network we've co-developed with MIT to basically give a quantified view, saying, hey, you're at a 7% likelihood of a ransomware attack in the next 12 months, while the industry average is 5%. So that suddenly gives you the benchmark. Every time somebody does a patch or you buy a new product, you can see where the needle moves. And not only that, we actually say that, look, if there is a ransomware in the next 12 months with the probability mentioned, what is the dollar value risk you're sitting on? So you can say, hey, if a ransomware occurs, we're looking at a $30 million of risk, while the industry average is $24 million. And the beauty is the CISOs, or the risk professionals, generally don't need to go back to their board and say, hey, I need more budget. You suddenly just go back and say, this is the risk we're sitting on. Are you okay with this risk or not? And if they're not okay with the risk, the only thing that they can do is either give you more budget or buy more cyber insurance, because with risk, you can only mitigate, transfer, or accept. So we've just put all of that together in a very simple framework to put things together.
So would it be appropriate to describe essentially what you're doing is taking the environment that you have and making sense of the environment for the board, for the C-suite, to understand, all right, we bought all these products, they're in operation, what exactly are they doing to mitigate our risk? Is that the best way to describe it?
That's absolutely right. And the only addition to that is, even if you don't have a lot of products, which product will give you the maximum bang for the buck? Because we actually tell you control by control that if you buy a particular type of product, and we never recommend vendors, we only recommend categories of products, categories of what you can do to mitigate the risk. If you do that, how much will your dollar risk come down, and what percentage of the industry is using that particular product? So suddenly you have a business case that you can go back to the CFO with, and you can see and juggle to say, hey, what products really will move the needle in my environment? How much will that move? And then you can consistently communicate that, starting from the board all the way down to the CISO, the IT ops, the security ops, the cloud ops, et cetera, et cetera.
Saket, could you repeat or define how you can measure and the dollar reduction?
It's a great question, Olivia. If you think about the dollar risk that you're talking about, dollar risk comes from two things. One is the likelihood of being breached and the potential impact. So that's how you look at things. The likelihood is for a control. It basically says that, based on cyber insurance claims data, based on hack data, and we've analyzed 5,400 hacks, we say, look, if this control is there in an environment like yours, of your geography, industry, and size, this much likelihood will go up or down. This is built by something called a Bayesian network. Now, when you couple that with the potential impact, the lower bound and the upper bound in terms of dollar terms, we can actually tell you the exact dollar risk you're sitting on overall. And for each control, then we can actually say how much will that mitigate from that overall pie of dollar risk which is there. Popularly, there's a methodology called the FAIR methodology. It's exactly the same. It basically is Monte Carlo simulation. So that's what it is.
Gotcha.
All right,
now.
hold on.
Okay.
I need to wrap this show up because we also have a special guest that I want to bring on. Because everyone, if you had not clicked the link at the bottom of the screen, please click the link now to register for next week's Super Cyber Friday, which is Hacking Like a Cyber Crook, an hour of critical thinking about attack paths. As I want to also mention is, if you register early or entered in a raffle to win a CISO Series jacket, congrats again to David Peach for winning this week. Hey, thank you to Sockets Company, Safe Security. By the way, their web address is safe.security. There's no .com, there's not .io, it's the word security, safe.security. That's where they're at. And I love your description of what you are doing for the environment. And by the way, what you're doing so completely speaks to our audience. We talk about these issues all the time. It's a great model. I really like what you guys are doing. Hey, let me mention, more like in about 100 minutes from now, we're going to be having our Cybersecurity Headlines Week in Review. Our guest is Jason Elrod, the CISO of Multicare Health Systems. It is now on our CISO Series YouTube. We're not on, you can actually technically see it on LinkedIn, but if you actually want to participate in the conversation, head on over to YouTube, and that's where you can join in our weekly Headlines Week in Review. And essentially, we just, for 20, 25 minutes, we take a look at the week's news and give you some context as well. Stick around for our meetup. They'll click our link at the bottom. You know what? That's not yet. Let's don't put that yet. We're going to introduce our guest in what time is it? In just 3 minutes. So let me just say I'll stop there. And all right, with just a minute left, Olivia, I'll let you start first. Any last thoughts on this topic? And if people want to get in contact with you or any special projects you're working on, let us know. 1 minute, go.
Please reach out on LinkedIn. Olivia Rose Cybersecurity, I think, is my handle. Or you can probably see me blathering away about.
Actually, if you look at the registration page or just the information page, if they click on your name, they'll go straight to your LinkedIn page here too. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm currently on a short sabbatical between roles, which is very exciting. Enjoying life a little more before I go back to being a CISO again, and then enjoying life a little more than that.
All right. Our special guest disappeared, supposedly. I don't know where she went, but we're going to hopefully get her back. She's here. Great. We'll get her back on in just a second. All right. Saket, I'll let you, you actually have 2 minutes right now. So 2 minutes, I'll ask you, first of all, a question I always ask everybody, are you hiring? Are you hiring?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Isn't?
No, I'll tell you, some people say no to that, but almost every case, everyone's hiring for that matter. Anything to add? And if people want a demo of Safe Security, they want to learn more about Safe Security, what's the best way to do that, and how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, contacting me is actually pretty straightforward. You can go to LinkedIn, or actually my email is pretty straightforward, s@safe.security. So it's as easy as it gets. So very, very comfortable in people reaching out. And just as closing thoughts to what you said, David, is we actually see that the number one risk, and IBM, by the way, came out with this new report which says Cost of Data Breach Report, which mentions cyber risk quantification as the third largest impact or driver to reduce your cost of data breach, more than your XDR and zero trust implementations. And we were pleasantly surprised when we see that. So you'll see more and more, companies, not just us, coming up with the whole concept of cyber risk quantification. And as John Doerr says, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. So I would say it's almost.
Let me just say, it isn't just John Doerr. Everyone says that.
I say that to my kids.
Everybody says it.
Well, he made it popular at least for sure. So
You can't manage what you don't know, what you can't measure, what you can't, if you don't know it exists, you're out of luck. Exactly. I'm sorry,
Exactly.
did I cut you off?
Not at all, David. Just wrapping up there. So therefore, getting to the right measurement with or without safe, but getting there is very important. There are enough data science principles, Bayesian network, Monte Carlo simulation. I saw one of the comments said, you said FAIR, but that's a black box. No, we don't use FAIR, but we use some first principles of FAIRs because there are some good things about FAIR also, which is out there. So we've taken the good stuff, automated that so that it's easy 1 week deployment, and the output is quantification with prioritized actions with dollar risk. So I'll stop there, David.
All right, cool. Let's bring on our special guest. I'm very excited. Invites in. By the way, two other things that I didn't mention earlier: that we do our Super Cyber Fridays every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to sponsor a Super Cyber Friday, just contact me at david@csoseries.com. And here is our special guest. It's Antonia Hellman.
Hi.
Who is Antonia Hellman? She is one of the founders of Toucan, the program that we use after the show for our meetup portion of the event. And I'm thrilled to bring her on. Toucan is a really awesome platform. And I'm just going to set you up a little bit here, Antonia. As I understand, you created Toucan as a graduate student at Stanford.
As an
It was
undergrad.
undergraduate
Yes.
student at Stanford. And this was a pure COVID project. And it simulates a real party, if you will, but in a virtual environment that you can drift in and out of conversation seamlessly as we would do in a real physical world party, because we weren't having any of those during COVID. Let me ask you, you have actually come out of beta now officially. You are now a full-blown application charging actual money. We are actually paying you to as well. Happy to do so as well. What has surprised you in the way people are using this platform? And by the way, Aaron, can you change the link to the bottom to the Toucan meetup that we're going to do in just a few minutes? Go ahead, Antonia.
So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here and happy to be among great company. And thank you for that introduction. You're completely right. I basically could just leave now. You explained it so well.
Don't leave. I'm assuming you're coming to our
I'll
meetup too.
But to answer your question about what's surprised me, I guess it kind of confirmed my hypothesis over time as we've seen people use Toucan and as we've seen people get out of COVID and the pandemic kind of decline a little bit. But what we're seeing is that people really do appreciate virtual events. And that sounds like a kind of duh thing to say, but when we talk to people, they're very excited about getting back in person. They're very excited to see their friends, see their communities. But what we've actually found is that in practice, people actually don't want to commit the time to commute to everything, or they don't turn up to in-person events, and they do turn up to virtual events. And so whenever people produce in-person events, they say, well, how can I tune into this virtually? And event organizers get really frustrated because they say, oh, I asked everybody what they wanted. They all said that they wanted in-person events, but actually it turns out that they want this virtual component. People want to be able to tune in from anywhere, and they want to be able to include people from all around the world, because now communities that started local have all of a sudden turned global through the pandemic. And people get together on Toucan and it feels like they're actually in person, which is really heartening for me to hear, because that was the whole mission at the outset, was to give people an experience that felt natural, that gives people the joy of interacting in person, even though they're in Paris or they're in Boston or wherever they are in the world.
I also want to just quickly say one of the things that's the nice feature too that we were using before, but we don't have a big enough environment that needed. But for bigger companies, the fact that you have these spaces that you can get your own space and act more like of a water cooler environment where it's just like it's always there, it's always open. Whoever happens to be coming by, kind of like in the real world, where I wonder who's hanging out by the kitchen today, kind of has that capability, but in a virtual environment as well. And I think that's kind of a cool way to put it. All right. We're going to exactly 30 seconds. We're going to head on over there. So everyone, do me a favor. Antonia's going to be there. Olivia, Saket, everybody's going to be over there. Click the link at the bottom of the screen now to head over to Toucan. You're going to have to actually register in. You can actually click on your Google account and you can get in there really quickly. You'll have to set your audio and video as you come in, but just come on in, join us, and join in conversation. Try not to group together in too big a group. Try to get into smaller groups and feel free. Don't be embarrassed to float in and out of one conversation to the other. I greatly appreciate it. I'm going to, huge apologies. I didn't address anybody's 10% tips. Well, my apologies for that. Thank you so much for the 10% tips. We will publish them as well. We'll get them up. We'll get them published. I'll put them up on LinkedIn or on our site, somewhere like that. Regardless, I'm now over time. I want to get us all over to Toucan.
Where's the link?
Oh, the very bottom of the screen where it says, immediately following the video chat, join our meetup with other cybersecurity professionals. See the green thing at the
Oh,
bottom
I didn't have my glasses on.
There you go. Put your green glasses on. All right, Olivia, click that link. Saket, click the link. Antonio, you know what to do here. And everybody else, get over there. We want to see you there. Bye. Take us out, Aaron.